And so finally we're left with a model, something like this. John already mentioned physiologic reserve. We start out with a lot. At some point we have too little to survive and we die. And in between, a lot goes on. That's our lives. We imagine that this physiologic reserve goes down over that lifespan. It's punctuated by medical challenges of some sort. Arthritis at, let's say, age 60. Pneumonia, bad pneumonia bout at 70. Congestive heart failure at 80. We have dips, and then we might recover to some extent. But on the whole, it's a slide down. What can we do about this? Well, one thing would be to just move this curve upward and to the right so that we always have more reserve at every age. And I think that's the real challenge and excitement about interventional gerontology. That's what we're trying to do. Keep that up. But even if we can't do that, we have plan B. That's this dotted line here. We need a certain amount of physiologic reserve to function, to not be disabled. Right? John already mentioned we have more than we need. That's all this. We can actually lower this threshold, that's my line 2, by changing environments and making it easier to be independent and functioning in old age. And that, I think, is a lot of creative thinking in that area as well. So we have 2 strong quivers in our armamentarium, 2 things that we can do that are going to make aging better. Okay, now, in the interest of time, I'm going to speed up a little more just to show you that we can do things. But I'm going to start off with a negative study, because sometimes the best ideas we have, we think we're almost sure they're going to improve things, turn out actually not to, and may even make things worse. So I must inject a note of caution here. It's the scientist in me, you know. Hip fractures in nursing homes are a real problem. There were a number of studies that showed if you give people in nursing homes hip protectors, the kind of stuff football players wear, you know, they're going to fall, but that hip protector will prevent the fracture. And so the first crop of studies randomized nursing homes. One nursing home gets the hip protectors, one doesn't. Track all the falls, and lo and behold, those nursing homes with the hip protectors had less falls and fractures. However, that's a very weak experiment because it's not blinded. If you work in a nursing home and you know that my people are wearing hip protectors, they're not going to fall because I know that I don't want them to fall because we want this to work. So a different study approached the problem in a different way. It gave people one-sided hip protectors. And people were randomized to wear a hip protector on their right or their left side. Okay, so within the same nursing home. And we know that people are equally likely to fall on their right or left. So the only question was, you know, is the side with the hip protector on, is that the side that's going to have less hip fractures? And everybody was excited about this study. But what happened? In fact, the outcomes were worse in the hip protector group. This is the incidence of hip fractures in about 500 or 600 people who were followed over 12 months. And it was a great surprise and a disappointment, certainly a disappointment to the industry that makes these hip protectors, but also a real problem. I want to tell you that these were very accomplished researchers, friends of mine, in fact, who got in trouble for this study recently because they had begun to see an increase in the risk of hip fractures in the hip protector group and did not stop the clinical trial. Now, they had a data safety monitoring board to watch them independent, and that board did not tell them to stop the study. But still, in hindsight now, we had about an extra 20 or 30 fractures in this group, which meant a lot of disability to people. And it's the kind of real ethical challenges we face in doing this sort of research, which I worry about a lot, actually. Keep me up sometimes. The group of investigators here have had their funding restricted. They have auditors sitting in their labs, and they've had to send a letter to every family member who had someone in this clinical trial. Just to show you that there is a risk in trying to think creatively about improving well-being in old age. Be that as it may, I think it's something we have to do, and we have to take these risks, and we have protections now, I think, that help us avoid these sorts of problems. Let me just show you one or two or three of the best interventional gerontology, and then we'll come back to what I think old age is going to look like 20 or 30 years from now. Well, one great study just compared falling in one region of New Haven to two other regions. This region is the intervention region. They went out to doctors' offices and home care agencies and senior centers and places like Asbury and did falls prevention education with residents, older people, and physicians and home care providers. It turns out that physicians are not so good at falls assessment and prevention unless they're trained in it. And we're able to show that you really can reduce the risk of hospitalization due to falls. This is a great finding for us because even reducing the risk of hospitalization due to falls a little bit over a large enough population is a huge savings and a huge improvement in quality of life. We're doing the same thing in the study John mentioned. We're looking at the Healthy Steps for Older Adults program in all of Pennsylvania. We've been following about 2,000 people. This is not a randomized trial. We just took people as they come in senior centers all over Pennsylvania, and we do something very interesting. We call people every month and ask them if they fell. How would you like to be called every month? It's a short call. It's only 2.5 minutes, but I hate to tell you, it's a computer doing the call. It has a human voice. We say to Mrs. Smith, think about the last 30 days. Did you fall in the last 30 days? If yes, press 1. If no, press 2. If they press yes for 1, we get an email message, and we call that person, and we get all the details about the fall. Would you do that if I hate to say, we set up a protocol where the computer automatically dials the person over 8 days, twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, not on Sunday or holidays. And it works well. One of the wonderful things about interventional gerontology is you get to work with older people who are far and away the best research subjects. They seem to be more altruistic than young people and more willing to help. So I could even tell you a funny story about this. In this very large study, we consent people, they are registered into the study, and we enter their phone number into this computer system. But every once in a while, somebody gives us the wrong telephone number. So somebody gets a call who doesn't know us from Adam. But the funny thing is, they're older people often. And they complete the telephone interview even though they're not in the study. And eventually they get mad at us because they say, why in fact are you calling me? And we have to fill out an unanticipated deviation from protocol form for our institutional review board. But be that as it may. But anyway, here's the results from this study. If you say your balance is good, very good, or excellent, you get only about 2 falls per 1,000 days. And if you say your balance is fair or poor, you get more like 6 or 7 falls per 1,000 days. But the interesting thing to us is if we compare our intervention group to our control group, we are getting less falls in a very, very light intervention. This Healthy Steps for Older People, HSOA, is simply identifying people likely to fall through a simple assessment of gait and balance and telling them to go to the doctor. Also, we give them a referral, get a home safety check. And finally, we sit them down after lunch, of course, and give them 2 hours of education in fall risk situations. And this is an extraordinary thing. Remember I told you we call people after they fall and get the details of the fall? We say, what happened? And about half the people say, I don't know. I was just doing what I always do, and I fell. But another 20 or 30% say, you know what, I was doing something stupid. So there's plenty of room for recognition of fall hazards. So I'm going to speed up now just to show you that in very good randomized trials, we can get people to walk faster than they normally walk. Successfully, we compare an exercise group to an education group. They really do walk faster. Now we want to follow them further to see how it translates into lower risk of hospitalization, less falls, and things like that. Exercise also turns out to be very, very good for increasing the size of your hippocampus, which is part of your brain, which is involved in very important memory functions. We also, we should say this because Dr. Mickle is here, are very interested in engineering solutions to a lot of problems of old age. And in our Quality of Life Technology Center, which is a partnership between Pitt and Carnegie Mellon, we're working on many, many avenues in which we think engineering can help build reserve and address risk factors to disability. You might see in our lifetime cars that are coaches, or tell people, you know what, you're not driving that well right now. You know, things like this. They could measure how inconsistent your acceleration and driving speed is, for example. I think we're just beginning to see how far we can go with some of these. I'll skip this for now. But let me get back now to where I'm a little more comfortable, and that's with thinking, moving, and feeling. And I have a feeling, if you're an Asbury resident, you might start to hear a little more about thinking, moving, and feeling, because we're very interested to see if we can try some of the evidence-based interventions here and see if these things work well or see if people are interested in participating in these sorts of efforts. And let me just tell you about three of them. One for thinking, one for moving, and one for feeling. So in the realm of thinking, we have a lot of evidence that certain computer training can really improve people's speed of processing. That is, their reaction time, their ability to make judgments under stress, and how fast they can extract information. Okay? And we feel that we would like to see if we can improve speed of processing, and we think that probably would translate very well into driving skills and other things that you do every day. And we wouldn't recommend this except that there's a lot of clinical trial evidence already out there in some younger populations to show that this works. One study showed, for example, that people in a randomized trial who completed this computer training had less crashes over a year and paid lower insurance premiums. Not too bad. Another is moving. And here again, improving gait speed seems to be the order of the day. If we improve gait speed, can we reduce falls and fractures? And there may be some spillover benefits. And finally, in a realm I didn't have time to talk about too much today, feeling, we'd like to see if very simple behavioral therapies can interrupt pathways to depression. And by pathway, I mean things like insomnia. We know that there are very simple behavioral strategies to improve sleep, and we know that sleep is related to depression. So if you improve sleep, can you reduce the risk of depression? Things like this. So we think all of these are a very good start for the thinking, moving, and feeling approach to building reserve in old age.